Okay, so let's get started putting this album together. And we'll be using the Designs by Shellie Country Affair paper. And we're also going to be using the Frank Garcia memory hardware. It's the large, it's the 6 chipboard page mini album. And we're going to be using this album for this project here. So let's find the paper that we're going to use to do the covers of the album. So let's go find that and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is the paper that I decided to use for the cover. It looks like this, and it looks like this on the back. And a lot of mine are going to already be pre-cut because I already pre-cut mine. Also, in the description box below, there will be a link to the cutting guide and also to the materials list of what we're going to be using for this album today. Now, on the cutting guide, if you're not using the exact die cuts and punches that I am, the measurements on the pattern paper will be different. Now the measurements for the cardstock are probably going to be the same. The only thing is when you add your pattern paper to the cardstock, you might have to adjust it to the whatever punch or die that you're using. So anyway, this is what I'm going to use for the cover. And what we need to do now is we need to take our score tape and go around the perimeter, put one down the middle, on two on either side, and so we can get ready to attach this to our album. And this is kind of like what it looks like, how I have my score tape. And what I'll do is after I remove the score tape, I will put some little wet glue in between, and then I'll attach it to my album like that. So let me go ahead and put some score tape on this, and I will attach it to my album. And also with the measurements, I like to have just a very small border around my my pattern paper, and it's usually about a 1/8. So if you want a bigger border, like a 1/4 inch border around, you're going to need to just cut your papers just a little bit smaller. But all mine are cut to a 1/8 border. So let me go ahead and put my score tape on and get these attached to my album, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, well I have my papers on, and this is what it's looking like so far. And if you've followed my tutorials before, you know that I do all my embellishing at the end. Right now I just concentrate on getting my papers on, and so that's what we're going to be doing. And also you'll notice in the cutting guide that I use a lot of not like normal increments for my measuring. So J&S Hobbies and Crafts has a ruler that has everything labeled really nicely so that you can follow along with the ruler, because the one that I have here has like little, I had to keep counting all my little numbers, so I need to invest in another little ruler too that actually has the numbers on there, so it's really easy. You can go right to it and cut. You don't have to count, because I do use 1/16 of an inch a lot, and 1/8, so that'll help if you get that. And they have them in metal and they have them in wood, so you have a choice of which type of ruler you'd like to have. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start on the inside, and we're going to start on page 1. So let's go ahead and I'll get the papers out for page 1, and we'll start putting page 1 together. Okay, so page 1. All our base pages are going to be the same size, and the base pages are going to be 7 13/16 by 8 1/8, and that's if you're going to want a 1/8 border. If you want a larger border, then you just need to cut your papers smaller, but I'm going to have just a little 1/8 border around my papers, so that's the size I'm going to use here. So you do need your base page for that, and you'll also need a piece of cardstock. For this, you're going to need a piece of cardstock. That's this one right here, which is 9 by 4 5/8. And depending on your die or punch that you use, I'm not going to give you measurements for the pattern paper, because unless you use the exact same one I'm using, I don't want you to cut your pattern paper and then it not fit. So the cardstock sizes are all going to be the measurements that I give you, but the pattern paper sizes are going to be cut to fit depending on the die or the punch that you use. If you use a decorative punch or die. The die that I'm going to be using throughout this whole tutorial is going to be this Heartfelt Creations Classic Borders and Die, and I'm using this one right here at the bottom here. I use the same die throughout the whole album, so I'll be using that. And this is what it looks like when it's cut. So what we need to do is you take your base page, and you're going to want to center your pocket cardstock and make sure it's even on either side and all the way down. And then we're going to actually fold it over and attach it to this. But the first thing we're going to need to do is we need to attach a piece of score tape to the bottom of the page. And I'm using a 1/4 inch and 3/4 inch score tapes throughout this album. But for the bottom of this, I want a narrow one, so I'm going to be using the 1/4 inch score tape for the bottom of the page. So I'm just going to add a strip at the bottom of the page. And whenever you add your score tape or any double-sided tape, you got to make sure you burnish it really well and get it right into the paper like that. And then I'm going to remove that. I'm going to center it. And then I'm going to flap these, pull these. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. But I need to get really close to this when I attach this to my cardstock. And this is what I mean about the flaps. When you wrap it around, you're going to have these little flaps, and these you just glue down. But if they don't need to be this big, you can cut them down, which is what I'm going to do, and make them just a little bit narrower. And then I'm just going to attach them like that. Okay, so this is how it's, whoops, I'm sorry. You see how it's attached in the back? I just glued that on. I just use wet glue. You can use hot glue. But I forgot to tell you, the paper that I used for the first page is this one here. It has this design on it, and it has this print on the back. So that's the one I used. And this is what it looks like with the pattern paper that I picked this one to go under here. Now, if you use this punch, this die, and what you need to do is you need to take inside the little packet, you'll see this little thin, this one here, and this is what you'll need to do. You'll need to center it on your paper and make sure it's centered and line it up, and then just send that through your die cutter, and that way you'll fit right up under here like that. So that's if you use that die. So it depends on what die you're using. But that's the one. You'll use those. Those are the three that we'll be using throughout the tutorial. On those. So let me just stick that back in this little container. Okay. So this is going to be page 1. So what we need to do is we need to take our score tape, we'll go around the perimeter, 1 down the middle, and 2 on either side. And we'll set this aside, but we will not put that in our album right now. And this is what it looks like with the score tape on. That's how I put the score tape on this one. So now we're going to go to page 2. And this is what we're going to have for page 2. It's this paper right here. It's the one we just used on the other one. You're going to cut your base page. That is 7 13/16 by 8 1/8. That's going to be your base page. You're going to need to cut your cardstock for your pocket. Now the cardstock for your pocket is going to be 9 by 4 3/4, because I'm using this punch here. And then you're just going to need to cut your design paper according to the die that you use. And this is actually going to be a side pocket like this. Not a bottom pocket. It's going to be a side pocket like that. And this is what I'm going to use for mine. It's the same paper, but I cut this out, and this is going to go like that on the side. So I am going to add my score tape on the side here. This little narrow one. And it just goes down here. And if you have any score tape that hangs over, you know you have to cut that off. And then I'm going to just attach this, wrap around my edges, a little overhang. I'm just going to wrap that around, And then I'll attach this like that. And when I have that all attached, I will show you what mine looks like. Okay, this is what it looks like, just like that. So I just wrapped it around. I already have my score tape on the back. I used the 3/8 inch score tape because it just gives me a little bit more coverage with the tape. And so anyway, and also just to let you know, when I have to add my pattern paper to these already cut out pockets, I will attach my pattern paper to my cardstock first before I wrap it around. That way I know I'm not going to be off, because if I put this off just a little bit, this will be off also, and it'll just not be even. So it's just easier for me to actually attach this piece first and then wrap it around. But whatever works best for you is good, but I for some reason I have a hard time with that, so I have to do it this way for me. Well, anyway, we're going to get ready to attach these 2 pages in our album. So let me get the album out and we'll do that. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. I don't have them glued in yet. I just have them sitting up, just so I have an idea how they're going to look. But this is what they're going to look like. And I will attach page 2 first in my book. That way I can line up page 1 to page 2. So that they're, so that they're even on the top. Because the inside pages are always smaller than the covers. So this is how I was going to do. So this is kind of like what it's going to look like. But first, let me go ahead and glue these in, and then I'll show you what they look like. Okay, so this is what they look like in the album. We've got the 2 pages in right now. They turned out really nice. This is what I mean about lining it up. I wanted to make sure I could line up with, with this page here, because you can see there's a difference in size, so it's going to make a difference. But the pages line up, and that's what I was aiming for. So now all we need to do is go to the next. So now let's start working on page 3. Okay, for page 3, we're going to actually do a door with a latch on this one. So the first thing we need to do is our base page. And as you can see, my base page is not a full page. Well, it's part. What I did is I went through my scraps, and I just found a piece that was my biggest, widest piece, and then I just added some cardstock to it, and then I cut it to size, which is 17 and 13/16 by 8 and 1/8, and then I'm going to use that for my base page. Because I like to use up my scraps when I can, especially when I'm making an album, because I want to make sure I have enough paper to finish it. So I kind of like use my scraps as I go. We are also going to be having a pocket for the bottom, and I believe the pocket cardstock measurements for this is going to be 8.5 by 5 5/8. And of course you're going to, your pattern paper, you're going to just need to cut it to whatever you use for your design for your page. And of course I've already done mine, so this is what mine's going to look like here. And this is going to get wrapped around the bottom, so it's going to be like a bottom pocket. So it's going to be like that. For the doors, you're going to need to cut 2 pieces of the door. The doors are going to be 8.5 by 5.5, and you'll need 2 of those, and you'll need to score them at 5 1/2 on the 5.5 inch side. That's this side right here. You'll need to score them at 1 5/8 and 1 3/8, or 1 3/8 and 1 5/8. I mean, all the scoring and measurements are in your cutting guide, so that's what you're going to need to do there. And they're going to go like right here, like that. So they'll go in like that. So that's my plan for this one. The only thing I haven't 100% decided is what kind of a latch I'm going to use. I don't know. Do I want to do magnets, or do I have a little, those little latch pieces? I got one of those. I might do that. And if I do use that, I'm going to be painting it white. I won't use that green. But first, I just want to get everything together first. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pocket on the bottom. And it's just like before. I'm going to add score tape to the bottom. Let me get my score tape. Just add some score tape to the bottom. And then I will add my pocket like so on the bottom. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. So let me go ahead and do that and I'll show you what mine looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like with the bottom pocket on. So that's what we have here. So what we need to do now is the measurements for the doors is in the cutting guide and also for the score lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it on the very first score line. I'm going to fold it all the way out like that. I'm going to put my page in and then I'm going to line it up, make sure it's all lined up, and then I'm going to hold it real tight. I'm going to flip it over and then I'm going to glue this on, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other door. And let me do that and then I'll show you what mine looks like. Okay, so this is what we have so far, and I've decided I am going to go ahead and use the little latch. I'm just going to paint it white and I'm going to stick it right here. The little latch. It's just a little one. But if you don't have a latch, what you can do is when you open up your doors, place a magnet in the center. You'll come down to about the middle and come in maybe a ½ inch and put a magnet here on both of these before you put your pattern paper on, and then when you close it and you turn it over, we'll find the mate, and then this will hold this down for you. So you can just hold it with a magnet. So what I need to do is I'm going to go paint this white, and my little Brad too. Paint these white, and then I'm going to see what papers I want to use for the inside because I need to do that. Okay, here's what it looks like with the little latch. I just painted it white. I just put a little gesso on first and then painted it with white satin paint. And yeah, so then when you open it, it'll look like that inside. So that's this page. So now all I have to do is put score tape on the back and mount this in our book. So let me do that and I'll be right back. Okay, I got it in the book. So this is what it looks like in the book. For those of you who have the 1/4 inch border, you're going to find yours is going to fit in here a lot better than mine with the 1/8 inch because it's a really tight fit. And the gusset in these books is only like 3/8 of an inch, so it's very, very small. I didn't realize it was going to be quite so small. And it's really tight. And so I just need you to be aware of that. So when we do the next ones, I need to make sure everything is not so, because as you can see, you don't really have much of a gusset to work with. It's like there's no space. Well, anyway, we got this page in, and it looks really nice. So now we need to go to page 4. So let me set that aside, and we'll go over to page 4. Now page 4 is going to be really simple, which is a good thing because we don't have room for anything else. Is we're going to have your base page, and what we're going to do is you're going to cut 2 corners from this die here. This is the die that I used for the corners. I've used this before. We're going to use this for a corner tuck spot, and it's the frame and card leafy border, and this is in the materials list. It's the HCD27190, and you're going to need to cut 2 of those in white cardstock. Leave a ½ inch border when you cut these out, and what we're going to do is we're going to set one the upper left and one on the lower right, and that's what I'm going to do. And let me do that, and then I'll show you what mine looks like. Okay, this is what they look like after you cut them out. You have the little ½ inch border, and then you're just going to want to cut out the notch on the bottom, and that way they'll fit right on the corners like that. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to wrap these around and glue them, like I said, the upper left and the lower right. So let's do that. Okay, so this is what it should look like. got your two corners on. Now if you don't have this punch, you can just cut out, you know, a piece of white cardstock, and you can use a regular punch if you like. So yeah, and then put your score tape on the back, and we'll get ready and we'll just mount this in our book. Okay, so this is what this looks like. So we got it all in our book, so now let's go to page 5. Okay, so get your base page out for page 5. It looks like this on the back. And this is the pink one. And then this is going to be for a left side pocket. So you need your cardstock cut at 4.5. I got 8.5, but if you want to have a little bit more to wrap around, you can make it around 9. Because when you see this, there's not a whole lot to wrap around. You really don't need a lot to wrap around, but because I just took a piece of scrap white cardstock for this. So, but if you want to make it a little bit longer, you certainly can do that. And then you need to get your piece for there and cut it to fit. And this is the one I used for this one. It's actually the extra piece from this piece here. I just cut, and I'm just going to put it so it'll look like this when it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and get mine all together, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, we got the side pocket on. So all we need to do now is just put our score tape around and then just mount this in our book. So let's do that. Okay, for page, we're on page 6. This is what I'm going to use for my base page, this little bunny one, and it's pink on the back. And this is going to have 2 flip outs to the right. So we're going to need, so it's going to look like this. 2 flip outs to the right. So you need your base page, and then you're going to need 1 page cut. Now, okay, let me get 1 page cut at 6 7/8 by 1/8, and then 1 cut at 6 1/2 by 8 1/8. And of course, the measurements and score lines and all that are going to be, like I said, in there'll be a link to that in the description box below. So in case I don't accidentally tell you wrong. So we got this. So what we need to do, this is going to be the inside page. This is our first page. I already got mine cut how I want that to be. That's the inside, this is the outside. So this is going to go on just like that. And we have this is going to cover it on the outside. And then for this one, I need to make sure it's going to go over it like this. And this I have for this side here, this one. So that's what I have. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. So I am going to, first thing I'm going to do is put my piece of score tape down this one side here. So I know, so I don't forget which side I'm putting my flaps on, or flip outs. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to take this one. Oh, I really didn't even need to do that, did I? Nope. I didn't need to. You don't need to do this. I was thinking pocket. You don't need to do that because this is getting adhered on the back. So what I'm going to do is very carefully, I'm going to remove this, and I'll be right back. This is what we have. We have this flip out here, and then this flip out here. And I was able to remove this score tape with minimal damage, which is very hard to do because score tape, once it's down, is usually down. And then we're going to put score tape on the back, and then we're going to mount this in our book. Okay, well this is what this looks like. Now so far I've come to 2 dilemmas here. I should have put magnets behind this before I attached all my paper because nothing holds this down now. So what I'm going to do with this one, so if you're watching me and you haven't done it yet, that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to put a magnet behind this flap here and a magnet behind this paper here to hold everything down. Okay, I'm just not going to rip my paper off to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a magnet on the bottom here on this one, because I can probably cover it up with a little trim or something. And then I'm going to place another magnet on the back of this first flap on the bottom, which I can also cover with a piece of trim. So that I will do that. So that was one dilemma. And then I'm going back through my book and I realized this did look pretty nice. I thought that was such a clever idea with this latch, but then it dawned on me, wait a minute, this latch is doing nothing. So what I have to do with this one is I'm going to place a magnet on the bottom here and on the bottom of here, and that will hold this closed, this one panel down closed. I don't need to put anything on here because the latch will actually keep this panel down, but I had nothing keeping this panel from, I don't know what I was thinking, but this latch needed to be in a place that didn't move, and this moves. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to place magnets on the bottom of these two to hold this down. So that's what I do. So these are the two things I've run across so far. And hopefully that's all. But okay, so now let's go on to the next page. And I believe this is going to be page, what page are we on? Okay, I think we're on page 7. So let's go ahead and start page 7. Okay, now page 7 and page 8 are exactly the same. You're going to want to cut your base page. This is the paper I used for mine. It's that on the back. And then you're going to want to do your cardstock pocket page. And then you're going to want to cut your design paper to fit. I know I have to trim my cardstock on that one because I know my cardstock is too long. I was going to do that, so I'll have to trim mine up. So that's what it's going to be, page 7. And this will be page 8, done exactly the same. These are just going to have bottom pockets. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what they look like. Okay, I have my 2 pocket pages done. So all I need to do is, well, I just need to put some more score tape on there and just mount these in my book. And then we'll go on to the next page. And this is what these 2 pages look like. Okay, now we're on to page 9, and this is your base page. It's this on the back. And we're going to be making a waterfall. So for the waterfall, you're going to need to cut your cardstock, and they are 4 3/8 by 5 1/8. And then you're going to score on, let me see, I'm trying to read my instructions. You're going to score on the 4 3/8 side at a 1/2 inch. So that's what you're going to do here. And you're going to do that for all 6 pieces. Now in your card, in your paper pad, you're going to find a sheet that has all these little frames in them. And you're going to find there's 6 of them on the page. So I need you to cut out all 6 of the little frames. And then go through your scraps and cut out 6 for the backings of them, because you're going to have one of these, and then you're going to need to have something for the back when you flip your waterfall over. So you'll have something for this, and then you'll have a piece for the back side. So that's what you're going to need to do. And this is going to be a side waterfall, so it's actually going to be coming out in the middle on the left side. So it's going to be going like this. The waterfall is going to be going like that across the page. You'll also need, for a closure, you'll also need to either use a ribbon or however you want to make your closure. But what I did is I have this little decorative 1-inch, like a ribbon strip, some Martha Stewart punch. It's 1 inch across, and then I made it 9 inches down. So if you don't have the punch, you can just cut a piece of cardstock, or even if you have a piece of leftover scrap decorative, design paper, cut a piece that's 1 inch wide, 9 inches long. And we're going to use that as our closure, because we're going to also need magnets for this too to close it. So let me get everything a little organized and get my papers on my waterfall, and I will show you what they look like. When I'm putting mine together, I noticed that my border on the top and the bottom is more than I like to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just raise these up a little bit and get the amount of border that I want showing, and then I'm just going to trim the excess cardstock off so I don't have such a wide border. So I'm going to do that. Okay, this is what they look like. Got this one. And what I did, I just went through my scraps. I just found some scraps that I could cut to fit. And that's what I did for the backs. So all the backs are just little pieces from my scrap pile of the papers. And I just found some to fit. So that's what I did there. So this is all set. So now all we need to do is we're going to put that across our page here. So what I need to do is I need to find the center, and then we're going to line this up, and then this is going to close it down with the magnet. And first, let me find the center here, so I know, and the center of one of these, and once I get started on that, I'll need to put a strip of score tape on the backs of each one of these, and the 3/8, this 3/8 score tape is perfect for that, so that would be a good one to use. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to start right here, and I'll go ahead and do that. And the layout of a waterfall is the same whether you're going this way or whether you're going this way or coming over to the side or even going up maybe. Yeah, you're just going to lay it down. You're going to take your next one, and you're just going to butt it right up to it, and then you just continue on across your page. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you what mine looks like. Okay, this is what I have so far. I have the little waterfall put on the page. That's what I have so far. So what you need to do is we're going to need 2 magnets, and then you need your strip, your 1 inch by 9 inch strip. What we're going to do is we're going to place a magnet in the center here. I'm going to place one. As a matter of fact, I think instead of putting it here, I'm going to put it on the inside, on the back. So now I'm going to flip this over, find the center, make a mark, and then I will put my, as a matter of fact, to make it a little bit more easier, I'm going to put my magnet on the back, on the bottom of this piece first. So I'm going to find the center, where I think the center is right about here. I'm going to want my magnet on that, so I'm just going to flip my little strip over, get some glue on my magnet. Pin is stuck in there. I'm just going to place a little bit of glue. Right there. Let that set for a minute, and then I'll attach it to the back, and then I'll flip it over, and then we'll find the mate for that one. But let me just give that a few minutes to set up a little bit before I do that. Okay, I think that's set up enough. So what I'm going to do now is just going to hold this in the center, more or less in the center, as center as I can eyeball it, and then I'm going to hold it down, and then I'm going to bring this up, and then I'm going to wrap this to the back, and then I'm going to tack this down. Now we probably didn't need the whole 9 inches, but I'd rather have it too long than not long enough. So let me just glue that in place. And then we'll find the mate to that magnet. So we got it like that. Flip it back over again. Okay, and this is where the other magnet's going to go. Okay. So this page is complete, so when that sets up a little bit more, I'm just going to add score tape around the perimeter, and then I'm going to have 1 down the middle and 2 on either side, and I'll melt that in my book. Okay, the waterfall is in the book, and it's going to open like this, and then you'll have your waterfall. And I know you can see the magnet here, but that's something that I will cover when I do my embellishments. So now we're going to go on to page 10.